Back with another video for the Yi 4K Plus action camera. I wanted to make this video because Yi recently updated their firmware to 1.1.23. It's been a couple weeks since Yi released a firmware update, and I haven't made any other videos because there just wasn't a lot to talk about. So with this one, I wanted to look at the old firmware and then look at the menus and then look at the new firmware to see the differences. Okay, so this is 1.1.7, the old one. Let's take a look at the things that are available. On the new one, they said they added 1080p and 960p resolution for time-lapse video. So let's take a look at the settings for time-lapse video. And let's see, resolution. So on the old one is only 4K and 2.7K. All right. So they also added language support for Chinese and Russian, and Spain. Let's look at the languages here. So on the old one, they only have English and Chinese. They did say on 1.1.7 they added the Russian language, but I couldn't find that in the last firmware. So that must have been a mistake. They also said in the new firmware they fixed a bug which made Wi-Fi 5G inaccessible in some regions. I know there have been a few complaints about that too, where some people were only able to connect to the camera using 2.4G and they weren't able to connect with 5G. They've also said they fixed an issue with the image being reddish in certain environments. I know if they've been working on this for a little bit. In the last firmware they improved upon that. I think on this one they made a big improvement as well. But I won't be able to tell until I take the camera out to test it. Also, they adjusted video plus photo mode. They removed notifications during video capturing. I've never used that feature. And looks like a bunch of optimizations. Optimized voice command algorithm and improved recognition time. I think they probably took some voice samples from us and when we submitted them and probably add that to the algorithm. Optimize user menu interface. Optimize manual white balance performance. Optimize Flatcolor mode. And it supports multiple AWB modes now. Let's take a look at that. So I have it set to Yi color. Let's change it to flat. And looks like white balance is grayed out. So hopefully in the new firmware, you can change this while you're in the flat color mode. And the last thing is improve album stability. I don't usually browse the album on the camera, so I didn't even notice that was a problem. But I normally take videos and pictures and then take the memory card out and plug into my computer. So let's go ahead and update the firmware to the latest version and we'll look through the menus again. Okay, so the first thing I did test with the 1.1.23 build 844R firmware is that does it still work with the Samsung micro SD cards? And the answer is yes. So you shouldn't have to worry about updating to this firmware and having your SD card stop working. We'll look through the menus again to see what has changed. So the first thing we'll see is added 1080p and 960p resolution for time-lapse video. Let's take a look at that. Time-lapse video resolution. So previously there was only 4K and 2.7K. Now it looks like to be 1080 and 960. The second one is added language support for Chinese, Russian, and Spain. Let's look at that. Language. Before there was English and Chinese, now there's English, Chinese, Russian, and Spanish. Okay, and then the last thing is added lapse photo DNG support. Lapse photo, time-lapse photo, settings, DNG support. Okay, so it looks still grayed out. So I don't think they changed this one yet, so it's still grayed out. I don't think they fixed this one yet, but looks like it's coming soon because I don't remember it being grayed out in the last firmware. Last thing I wanted to look at is they said they optimized flat color mode and it supports multiple AWB modes now. So we'll take a look at the menu. So we'll change the color from Yi color to flat. And it looks like you have a bunch of options for flat color now. Daylight, for example. So you can have flat and white balance being daylight. I think before it was only on auto. You couldn't change it.
Before I go out and test the image quality of the new firmware, I thought I'd show you a quick setup of my gear. I changed a few things. I changed the microphone from to a Rode Video Micro just to have a little bit smaller microphone. My E4K Plus is attached to the Evo GP Pro gimbal with a USB-C to 3.5 millimeter microphone jack, and then I kind of have it like twist tied here just to give the cable some slack for the gimbal. I have it connected to a hot shoe clamp on the bottom, and that's the microphone. So that's how it looks. This is probably the setup I would use if I care about sound. If I don't care about sound, I'll just take all the microphone gear off. It's a little bit bulky and a little bit weird, but I think this is probably the best with what I can go for now.